Hello everybody, my name is Nick Hampshire and welcome back to another episode of Being a Romantic While Not Asexual. Today's topic I would like to discuss is coming out as a romantic. I've had a fair amount of people either ask me how they came out to loved ones, parents, what have you. I've had other people tell me that they have tried to come out and it's not gone well for them. So I figured it made sense to make a video about it. Now, for myself, I was about 26, 27 when I figured out that I was a romantic. Well, when I learned about aromanticism, I kind of knew for a long time. And honestly, I feel like the thing that happens, at least from what I've seen with a lot of gay people, when they're like, oh, I'm gay, and they come out, their friends or family like, oh, we knew, I feel like that's how it was for me and my family. Like, they've known me my whole life. I've never really had any long-term girlfriends. I've never, even the ones I did have, they were very short-lived. And it's just never been a priority for me, And so both my parents, my dad thought I was gay for a long time and that I was just like hiding it or something. But even he kind of like just was like, oh, that's just Nick. And my mom kind of same thing, was like, oh, I just thought you were focusing on what you were doing. So if it would happen, it would happen, Now, both my parents are very understanding. They're very, they've always been very supportive. And I'm not saying this to brag. I know other people don't have the same kind of experience with their parents. But I'm saying it, I guess, to say that I can't exactly give the best advice on how to come out if you're having difficulty with difficult parents or like, not as open-minded parents or people in your life. I know different cultures and different families put a lot of pressure on people to live up to certain expectations, and that was something that I never dealt with, so I can't necessarily give the best specific advice on how to overcome that because I never did. The best thing I can say, I guess, is like, you are who you are. Like, if you are confident in how you feel, and if you are identifying as this, or even if you think you are, I really think that you should be able to talk to your parents or loved ones, friends, or whoever, and let them know that this is how you feel about yourself. A big reason why I make these videos is not just so that people can find representation for themselves, but I do my best to make them, easily consumable, broken down into these different segments where if you're having a difficult time expressing what you are feeling or how you're identifying, you could literally just send somebody a link to one of my videos. It'd be like, hey, this is how I'm feeling, or this is kind of like how I feel, or like, hey, like, this is a valid thing that people are, and I think that I may be like them, I try to make these as tools that other people can utilize in order to help them come out or help them express who they are to people in their life, Now, I know that, some friends are very validating, like, oh, you just haven't found the right person, you're scared of commitment, all these things, And the best thing I can say is, like, talk to your friends earnestly, If they're really your friend, I think you should be able to stop and be like, hey, when you say things like that, it's invalidating. It really, it hurts my feelings, or, you're not seeing me for who I am. And it's important to me that if we're friends, that you see me for who I am. So don't dismiss what I'm saying or assume that you know me better than I know me, because you don't. You know what I mean? Like, it's important that you take the time to understand that you're valid as you are, and that your loved ones should accept you as such. You know what I'm saying? So, I don't know, I've seen, there's a few, I know there was one specific comment in one of the videos where someone was so scared to tell their parents, and I just gave them the same advice. I was like, you should be able to go to them and be like, hey, this is what's going on. Like, this is a real thing. This is who I am and how I am. So that's, that's what's going on with me. And they were so scared that their parents were going to be, upset or like not understand or like give them a hard time. And they, they came back a couple videos later and like, hey, I told my parents, and they were, they were totally cool with it. And I was like really warmed by that, what I mean? That I had given somebody the, confidence to try to come out. So I feel like if you don't give somebody the chance to really understand what you're talking about, or to understand you, then you don't know how they're going to respond. Even if they've acted a certain way in the past, until you actually give them this information succinctly, directly, you know what I mean? You don't really know how they're going to respond. And I say this a lot too, when people are kind of deciding if they want to use the label or not. For me, I found in my experience and those that I've spoken with that using the label specifically kind of forces people to like turn a new page in their brain and start like make a new folder and like learn new things. Like if you're like, oh, if you're kind of wishy-washy about it and you're telling them things of other sentiments that they've heard in the past, they're just going to keep filing that into other things that they know, right? If you're like, oh, I just don't know if I like romance, or and like, oh yeah, I knew some people like that. They just, they just experience that like love, but it means something different to them, It's like, okay, but like, no, but like, I just everybody who I've dated, it just doesn't really feel right. It's like, oh yeah, you just haven't found the right person, blah, 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 you know what I mean? It's like, yeah, but like when I do get with them, I feel really anxious. Like, oh, that's just fear of commitment. Like every time you try to give them, like you're beating around the bush, or you're like giving them like pieces of it, you know what I mean? Like they can sort that stuff into other things that they already know. You know what I mean? So they just reference that page in their book of their brain, and they're like, oh yeah, I know that. Like I know people that are like that. I already understand, and this is what it probably is. You don't really know. You sound like you don't know what you're talking about, even about yourself. So like I'm gonna just tell you what it is, right? And that's not what you're trying to convey, and what the goal of your conversation is, right? So this is where I find using the label specifically is helpful, because when you tell somebody, hey, it's not just like a feeling of this, or like I'm not, I'm afraid of commitment or whatever. It's like, hi, I'm aromantic. Somebody who has never heard that before is forced to be like, what is that? You know what I mean? It's like suddenly like question mark. Like there's nowhere to filter the information to, so they have nothing to do but to listen to new information, right? So then you explain to them what aromanticism is, or even like show them my video, or any video really that like explains it. To really, I think honestly using the videos is a tool that like legitimizes it a bit. Like when someone hears, like if you tell someone, oh, I'm aromantic, it's, the lack of desire or ability to feel romantic love, right? Or romantic desire. Like even you as a single person, if that's the first time that person's ever heard of it, their natural instinct, right, is to, I think that not necessarily that you made it up, but that you are trying to imagine something different that already exists, right? They're like, oh, because that's the only way that like their brain can kind of work, right? Like they're presumably however many years old, 16, 20, 30, 50, whatever. They've lived a lifetime, right? And at any point in your life, you kind of always assume that like you kind of know most things, right? Like if there was any evidence that this thing called aromantic had existed before, certainly in my lifetime, I would have heard of it by now, right? So either two things are true when you first hear the term aromantic and you're not aromantic, right? It's like the first time you've ever heard of it. There's kind of two things your brain can do, right? Either you can immediately understand that, hey, maybe there's this entire thing that I've never heard of, and I'm about to learn something completely new, despite all of my years of existing beforehand, which seems unlikely. It's like kind of rare at a certain point in age that like that happens, which it's really not that rare, but we kind of feel like it is because we end up in our bubble. But I digress. So like the more likely scenario, right, is that they're going to take that information and be like, oh, like, yeah, that's just other information that you're twisting around to sound like something new, but like I already know what that is, right? And so their brain, the more likely scenario is that it's other stuff that's kind of being relabeled and is not really valid, so to speak. You know what I mean? And so that's kind of where a lot of people go with it. They're like, oh yeah, you're just like giving it a new name, but it's really like all this other stuff. It's really fear of commitment. You haven't found the right person, love, etc., right? So you have to get them to a point where be like, hey, like if you show them the video, you show them a study or a link with a study, whatever, you can really give people more research for them to kind of be like, oh, okay, maybe there is this entire thing that I have been, ignorant to, that I did not know about. And then they can really start to build on this new page of information, this aromantic page, and then kind of list you on that. You know what I mean? So I think the more you make it valid for other people, which can be difficult because, as I said, when they don't know anything about it, it sounds made up. Even being aromantic, sometimes that shit sounds made up. I'm like, really? But it does, And when I first learned I was aromantic, I thought, like, am I the only one? Like, how could me, like, I'm nobody special. Why would I be this lone person that can't feel love? That doesn't seem realistic. It seems far more likely that I'm damaged or that I haven't found the right person. Like, all these seem far more likely, but realistically, I'm aromantic. And then when you learn that there's so many other people that are aromantic, you're like, oh shit, okay, so it's not that weird. You know what I mean? So I think that when coming out to anybody, like I said, there's a certain level of directness that I think you need, and vulnerability, which honestly is, pretty difficult for a lot of us out there, but you have to be strong and vulnerable at the same time to just be like, hey, person that I'm coming out to, like, I need you to see me and hear me for what I'm telling you right now and not come to your own conclusions. If you don't understand what I'm telling you, here's a video about what I'm telling you. And I need you to acknowledge that, like, that's who I am. And I know, I guess sometimes there's expectations of, like, you know, oh, does this mean you'll never get married or never have a baby and stuff? And, like, that might end up meaning that. And I know that can be very devastating for families, and that can be the hard part about this. But that doesn't necessarily mean that. Like, as an aromantic person, you could still adopt with a friend or have a baby with a friend. You know what I mean? Like, there are ways you can still do certain things to still fulfill those expectations of your family if you want them. If you don't, then maybe that's a good time to, like, have a bigger conversation about, hey, you have set these expectations for me that do not match my own, you know, wants and desires. You know what I mean? Which may be a bigger conversation than you're ready to have, but I think is an important one for anybody that is important in your life, you know? So I guess that's pretty much it. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. As always, I really love this series. I've loved all the comments. If you have anything to say, connecting with it or refuting it or anything, please leave them below. I still try to respond to every single comment that comes my way. Please subscribe if you haven't. I have more videos coming on the way. You can find me on Instagram at Nick Hampshire. I'm going to be streaming on Twitch at Nick Hampshire. That's pretty much all I got today, guys. So lead with love. I love you as a friend. Have a good day.